Okay, guys, thank you again for joining us. I do see a couple new faces on the call tonight. I'm so glad you're here. If it is your first time, know that we talk on a topic, and tonight is just kind of what do you do after your big A race? You know, what's the thought process, the recovery, all the things. And we do have some topics prepared to speak on, but then we want to answer your specific questions as well, and hopefully help you, but then help others listening that might not have thought to ask those specific questions. So if you have a question, type it in the chat, and then we will get to it, and we'll stop after each slide so that it's kind of topic related. So I'm going to pull up a slide, going to get started, and then, as I said, I'm going to drop it here. Hold on, I'm actually on the wrong page. I don't know why that happened. Give me 1 second to pull up the right thing. Okay. Okay. I don't know why the slide is not coming up. Ashton, do you have the slide? Can I reshare, make it a dual share? And for some reason, it's not coming up on my side.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to do a dual share here. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. Okay, guys. So first thing, you finish your key race. And then we do have so many questions. We always have a debrief with athletes after they race, and it's kind of a what now. And so the first thing we just really wanted to address was the feelings that you have, the emotions you have after training for many of you months and months and months for this key race. And I think it can go either way. And it's for you to know that is totally normal. Number one, the first way it could go is everything went really well, or you're just so excited about your accomplishment. And Ashton, you can actually drop this for a second, because we'll talk about this on a little while on the what happens next. You're so excited about your accomplishment that you're just on this all-time high, and you just like can't wait to keep that rolling again. And I think there's many of you coming off Ironman Texas with the team race and just all the relationships built. And even though the race didn't go well, I think the experience was awesome enough to kind of keep you on that high. But then, of course, there are some others that things didn't go your way, and you almost go into this post-race depression, right? So first, I just want to acknowledge that that's normal. But the key is to kind of identify where those feelings coming from, and then address them, right? Constructively. And that is a great exercise to go through, because I feel like those things come up in life as well. And so we're using the sport of triathlon to learn these life lessons that are making us, you know, stronger and more resilient people as a whole. So for myself, I always had a timeline of feeling the feelings. So if I was really upset, I would let myself feel it and kind of talk through it, and then really try to unpack why I was feeling that way. But then I would say to myself, okay, within a week, I need to have a solution, or I need to take action. I don't just sit in that. And I think some of us can sit in it for a very long time. And then something that did help me personally, and then I'll turn it over to the coaches, is I always would take inventory on the build to the race. And that was very constructive for me to say, okay, this is what I did right. This is where I kind of missed the mark. And in turn, this is the result I got. But then also during the race, what did I do well? What can I improve upon for next time? And then immediately I started turning my thoughts on, okay, what do I do next? You know, and come up with an action plan, not specific to a race, but it might be very simple, and we'll address it in a second. Address just like all the little things that can come together and make for better training for the next race, but then in turn make for a better performance. So I was less likely to sit in depression if I immediately switched to goals, you know, goal setting after that race. So does any of the coaches want to weigh in here for them?
I have something.
Oh, go ahead, Jules.
No, you go for it, Ashton.
I was just gonna say, kind of building on your feelings. One thing that I always remind myself is, like, you have these feelings, you have these emotions attached to something that was like really important to you, but you are not those feelings. Like, you had a bad race, but you're not a bad athlete. Or you had a rough day, but that doesn't like define what the next race could look like for you. And so kind of like Natasha was talking about, like replacing or focusing on what the things that did go good, that can kind of help reframe those thoughts that you're having in regards to, you know, if you had a bad race doesn't mean that it's over for you or you're a bad athlete or you don't have a future or whatever that is. And just refocusing on the positives that were that experience.
Awesome. Jules?
Yeah, no, you guys did a great job with the post-race feelings. I get athletes who will ask me, you know, even after a great race, why they have post-race depression. I always say, think about it, like for an Ironman, that's, you know, for a lot of people, 5 months where you're all in on that goal and it almost becomes your identity a little bit in a way. And so even during the hard weeks, you really enjoy the process and it, you know, consumes a lot of your life. And so when it's done, within the span of a day, it's kind of like what happened to that whole entire process. And so for me, you know, I will, after the week after the race, always plan things with friends or just stuff that I know I like to do outside of triathlon. You know, a week in advance saying, hey, like, let's get dinner on Monday night or Wednesday night, or let's go on a walk. It just almost lightens the week after for me and kind of, yeah, just grounds me and brings me back of like, I have, you know, a great circle. I'm able to reflect and yeah, it's just a positive week. So that's something that I'll do after a race.
Awesome. I feel like that's Charlie's MO too. Charlie, do you want to tell us what you do?
I mean, honestly, my thing is it's good and bad because I fly probably too close to the sun sometimes, but instantly like, all right, what's next? What's next? And just kind of like try to reset on those goals, but definitely, you know, trying to set up plans, little down weeks, always smart. If your coach recommends it, always do it. Take a down week, post race, post marathon, post anything. It's good for you, mentally and all that. So that's kind of all I had to touch on that, but
Yeah, okay. Awesome. Thanks, Charlie. Guys, anyone else? Chris, did you want to weigh in?
Natasha.
Oh, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, typically I have my best races after I've had a bad race. You could kind of reflect on your bad race and use that as fuel for your next race. So I'm using my Ironman Texas performance. Now, not a bad race, but I know I could have done better to fuel my next race at Lake Placid. So use it fuel for fuel for future workouts. I like to store it away and bring it up in those moments where you're in pain or suffering. So yeah, it's all how you frame it in your mind.
I like it.
And I'll say one thing really quickly. I know after the race, we all looked for next races, but I think even doing that a month before or so, like having a game plan a month out or 6 weeks out before your next race to have your next race on the calendar, that really helps too, to just know like, hey, it doesn't end here with this race. I already know I have X race coming up. I think that's super helpful, like looking out in advance, because after the race, sometimes you do just want to take some time off. And if you don't have anything else on the calendar, it's much harder to like get back in it and get back to training. But it's one of the best things you can do after taking a rest week. So look a little bit more advanced at your calendar if you can too.
Perfect. Yep.
Yeah. I'll, as far as jump in, I'd say that that's spot on. For me, I'd say that journey is a process of learning. And so the identify with finding is when you're gonna get left. And so it's what you just said, that going into a race, you should already be looking at what's next. It's not like I want to accomplish the next thing. So seeing what's past that and identifying what your why is and the importance of your going in and hold value to why you're doing it versus the result itself. So process would be the first one. And then the next one, giving yourself grace on just hormones, right? Like your body is exhausted, your body is beat, it's tired. And if you're having feelings and emotions, some of that is just your body just regrouping as far as rebouncing back. So making sure you get the sleep and the help that you need in that category. So I think those things are probably the biggest. And then you mentioned about feelings. I mentioned this pre-race, the feelings of your thoughts become your feelings become your behaviors. So if you're feeling a certain way and then you end up finding yourself dragging or finding yourself depressed or finding yourself wrestling with it, track back to identify what the feelings is, and then what is the story and the thoughts that you're having around that emotion, right? Around your race, looking for the positive, looking for the things that actually went really well in the race and identifying those and using that as a catapult for the next thing, how to improve moving forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Chris is driving right now, and so that's why we caught a little break up in the beginning, but I feel like we got all the key words there at the end, and everything was pretty much clear for the back end there, Chris. So thank you for that weigh in. So guys, Ashton, if you can pull up the next slide. Okay. Yeah, so I think we're just talking about setting new goals and what that looks like. And here are just some specific goals. I feel like the goals can go on and on as far as, because you can always get better in the sport, right? It's swim, bike, and run, but then there's also strength training, there's also nutrition, there's also the recovery around the training, there's the mental side of it. And so really being honest with yourself as far as what did you do well, and what you feel is lacking in your preparation from you getting your goals. And this is where the coach comes in, because a lot of the times we don't see it for ourselves when it's very clear for us. And we would look at the training schedule, and number one would say, where were you very consistent and where were you not consistent? So Ashton, you can drop this because I feel like some of us will weigh in over here. And so for me, I always look back and say, maybe it was strength training, that's one of the first things to go. And I hear that a lot from my athletes of like, man, I did all the training, but the first thing to go was strength when I was running out of time. However, I get to the race and my body's falling apart. And that's a very easy tie to strength training. Maybe you're out on the race and you had zero focus. It just was really hard for you to just like lock into yourself and your effort for that day. And then you got to ask yourself, did I do any mental preparation in my build? Because what you practice in training will come through, but a lot of you just expect it to happen on race day and you've never thought about it in training, just having intention with what you're doing out there. So, and then I always like to take an inventory of do some things need to change. So maybe some of you guys, you're in a routine with your coach and you feel like this is the best way to train, when in reality, maybe it's not. Maybe you need to restructure the entire schedule to fit in better with your family life and your work life to where you can be more recovered for the key sessions. It may be an easy switch of the way you stack workouts. It just goes on and on and on. But the key thing for you, I think, is taking a full inventory of what went well, what didn't, what you think might need changing, and then addressing that with your coach. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? No, Cap. Let's go to the next slide. And I think, yeah, so one of the biggest things that we do tell athletes after doing an Ironman, you can't kind of sit in an Ironman build forever. And so the better development is taking a break from that, resetting and say, okay, maybe we need to build back up a certain foundation, improve our form in certain aspects. And in that cases, especially in line with our philosophy of training, it's reverse periodization of let's go fast before we can go far. A lot of us are capped by a ceiling of power and speed, and you can't really work on that when you're training 20 hours a week and you're all like dialing into your Ironman pace. And so maybe it's taking a step back and saying, I'm going to intentionally increase my threshold or my ceiling of power or my speed, and have little micro goals along the way. You sit with your coach and say, like, right now my FTP is 230. What do we need to do to improve that? Maybe your threshold's really good, but your peak power is terrible. Like you can't push any more power, for 10-second bursts. And maybe that's the limiter for you. Same thing in your running. You can't go fast, but why can't you go fast? Is it a strength component or is it a speed component? And you've just been running slow for the last 6 months. So I definitely would go back into that. And that's why we don't encourage athletes to back-to-back Ironmans. Do a reset, come back and do some sprints, Olympic distance, and then learn to extend from there. And a question I actually had earlier today is, how much is too much racing? And I would say if you are racing and you don't give yourself enough time to recover and have enough time to look at, see how you did in that race and actually take action to where you can become a better athlete within the next build to the next race, and then recover and actually race again, then that's too much racing for most of you. For others, if you feel like you have all the fitness and putting all the pieces together in training, but you have a very hard time executing on race day, well, maybe you just need a breakthrough in just racing, maybe because you get too nervous or it's just purely an experience thing. So I think it's again, having a honest conversation with your coach, getting guidance from them as far as what you need to do, and it might change in your development. Sometimes you just need to race a lot, but for the most part, for long-term development, you need to take breaks and actually build, recover, build, taper, and then be able to race your best race. Anyone want to weigh in on racing short?
I'll weigh in on this just because I think as we get into the summer months, we're all going to be traveling, we're all going to be having family stuff. And this is another very appealing thing with changing up your distance, whether it be on the running or on the full triathlon side, is if you can scale back the quantity of your workouts, but now you're doing quality sessions that are like 60 to 70 minutes, you're still going to be making progress. You're still going to be building fitness. But now it's not like this overburden of I'm on vacation and now I need to fit in a 4-hour, bike ride or, whatever it is, you can still enjoy your life. And so that can be also another appealing side of just changing distances is you're going to get fit, but then also you can live your life a little bit that you can't in Ironman training.
Very good.
There's also a concept of training or racing to race faster. So you actually have scheduled smaller races and you use them as a big workout day. So you do a sprint triathlon that you typically wouldn't do, or maybe you sign up for a local 5K, and just learning how to break out of that normal zone of training that you would keep on a track workout. It kind of forces you into that other gear. Blowing out the engines is what we called it, or getting fit through racing. This is pretty common in the running world, as people will just do a bunch of races and use those as like their tempo day, for example. So you could, if you love racing, and there's a lot of local triathlons here in Austin and all over the country that you could sign up and just jump in like a small event. They're typically very fun and low pressure.
Yeah, I'll definitely kind of just emphasize what Alex said. I mean, it's the way like I do that myself, like come off like a big block. It's like, all right, how can we, get faster ultimately, and then stack strength on top of that. It's huge. Just even as like a marathon or an ultra stuff, it's like I'm still probably gonna race a 10K this summer. Like as uncomfortable as it will be, won't be fun, but it just helps you like neuromuscular power, fitness there, and ultimately that'll make marathon pace feel easier as you stack that block or start into a bigger block. So
Perfect. Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, it's like, what is your why? Which is what Chris had said. Is like, why are you racing? If you're racing because you love to race and do these events, then do them. There's no wrong answer here. And then just get the coach on board with your reasoning. But if you do want to become a better athlete, then there definitely has to be a strategy involved and something you need to talk through. And again, I think it just changes. It changes in your stage of development. Whenever I have like a new up and coming developing athlete, the first year we actually get them just racing as much as possible, just to like learn how to race, and for us to then start to identify where the weaknesses are, and kind of do a gap analysis. If they are trying to compete and win their age group or turn pro, then you kind of say, okay, you've put a couple of races together, but the gap now between you and you reaching your goal is this, and it's something you're not going to realize until you actually get out there. So, okay. Anyone else? We do have some questions. Let's have a look. Charlie will go sub 30 for his fun 10K from Alex. I think Charlie wrote sub 29. That's funny. Charlie, what is your 10K PR?
29:07. So hopefully I can dip under that.
Okay.
Fingers crossed.
How fast is that per mile?
4:39.
Okay.
Or 4:38.
Per mile. Very good. I don't think I could do that in a stride. But it's awesome. Guys, Ashton, let's pull up the next screen. Yeah, here we'll just touch on it, and then we're going to focus on recovery with Coach Nick. But Yeah, sometimes you just need to think out of the box, something that might reinvigorate you. And here are some examples are like a team camp, training with others should be on here. Sometimes when I get stuck in a rut, it's just kind of getting out of normal. And a lot of the times it's environment will shift everything. And so if you can get into a fun, encouraging, supportive environment and seek that out, that's gonna a lot of the times just elevate this whole process. And then as we wrote here, there's trail running, there's Xterra, there's cycling races, there's swimming, then running races. Use all of them, again, great training, but it keeps you motivated to train week in, week out, because there's kind of something around the corner. And it doesn't have to be something you taper for or something with great emphasis, but it kind of keeps you in the game and then keeps you learning. So does anyone want to add to this? Nope. Okay.
I would say,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Natasha. Yeah, camp is definitely my favorite week of the year. It just gets me motivated and excited to be around other athletes and see people at all different stages and ability levels come on the same common ground, and we all break bread together. I am very much looking forward to it, and it's something I'd highly recommend. If you haven't done it, we'd love to see you out there.
Awesome. Yeah, we're going to open camp sign up, and this is the first year we're actually going to cap the camp. So it really is going to kind of be a first come, first serve, just because we do, yes, we're training, but there's a heavy emphasis on building relationships with the athletes that attend. And so when there's just too many people, it makes it a little harder. So be on the lookout for that email here in the coming week. That camp, just so you guys know, it's the end of July, and it's in West Texas, which is just beautiful out there. It's just immediately as you kind of ride upon it, you feel like your heart rate drops and your shoulders drop. It's just so peaceful. And then the roads are completely empty for tons of great riding. And while it's summer, it's temperate. I would say there's not as much humidity. It's a little bit at altitude. So in the mornings, we're actually getting rolling and it's maybe 60 degrees. And then by the time we're done, it does get up there, but we're done and then we relax. And then the afternoon activities are inside, or we're going swimming in a really cold pool. And then you need a jersey for dinner. So it will be a really special occasion, a special time. Okay. Focus on recovery with Coach Nick.
Sure. So the minute you cross the finish line, that's actually when your recovery starts. And a lot of people don't think of it that way, but there's physical recovery and there's mental recovery. And so doing whatever you can in the first 24 hours to really focus, if you were dehydrated, get hydrated, taking in quality nutrients, getting a good night's sleep, all those things that you did during your long workouts, long rides, long runs, whether it be Normatec boots, massage, foam rolling, all those things, you really need to replicate in that first 24 to 48 hours. And after that, then you need to allow yourself some time to mentally decouple from the training. And so I think there's been a lot of great talk at, some things you can plan during that week. Personally, what I like to do are two specific things. One is I lock my Garmin in my safe for at least the first week until I'm ready to train with data. And that doesn't mean I don't run. It doesn't mean I don't swim, but I just do whatever I want. When I'm ready to go swim, I just go swim, and I'm not going to sit there and look at my pace. I'm not going to look at the data. I'm not going to worry about my whoop score or my body battery or any of that stuff. I just want to take a break from all that data that I've really been tied to for the last several months. And then I really spend time that week, not only in addition to some of the things like Jules and Ashton meant, with really catching up with friends, doing all the things that I gave up. I give myself a 24-hour window where I just kind of do whatever I want to do. And so if I've been craving donuts for 4 months and I didn't eat them because I was focused on my race weight, I'm going to go have donuts. If I want to have a beer, if I want to go have drinks with a friend, if I want to go to In-N-Out or Whataburger and get the most unhealthy thing that I ever would, I would do it for 24 hours. And usually what I find by about 12 hours into that 24-hour day, my stomach really hurts, and I realize why I don't do that on an everyday basis. But I think it's good to kind of give yourself a reward. You worked really hard from it. You get a reward at the finish line. You have all those emotions. You kind of settle down over the next 3 or 4 days, and then you just kind of regroup and say, all right, so this is something I'm going to do to focus. I focused my recovery from a physical standpoint. Now I'm going to do the mental side of it. And so that can include all kinds of social things, take your kids on a bike to go get ice cream rather than taking a long trainer ride on Saturday morning. Go ride with your local club that perhaps you couldn't do that because they weren't doing the type of intervals you needed for the race distance, or they were going 20 miles and you need to go 60. So really just take that week to be very much immersed in the things that you felt that you set aside because they weren't your priority to get this race completed, and now kind of regroup back and get that healthy approach. And there'll be a point, maybe it's 7 days, maybe it's 10 days, where you're like, okay, I kind of want to go for a run and I want to see what my heart rate is, and that's the right time. Then you know you've went through that mental recovery. Then you know you've went through the do's and don'ts and what went well with your coach, and you can set the next race or look forward to the next race because you've had kind of that refresh.
Perfect. I do want to speak to what you just said there about kind of having a meeting with your coach. I would say you guys need to try to refrain from immediately setting up a call with your coach after the race, because it takes a few days of reflection to really kind of have a good conversation with it, because emotions are really high and right after the race, and things are not really thought through as well. And then you also start to realize, for example, that, okay, maybe you had a bad swim, and then you start looking at everyone else's paces and you're like, oh, wow, they all had a bad swim. It must have been the conditions, or it must have been a long course. You're not taking any of those things into account. And then this is a tactic just for you guys when you're racing is, don't count yourself out or whatever you're doing as I'm failing at this moment, because so many times I've not been hitting the paces that I wanted to hit. And then I get upset with myself in the middle of the race. And then when I finish the race, I realize everyone didn't hit the paces they wanted to hit because it was so hot. It was so humid. And why did I count myself out so early when I could have just hung in there and gotten a great result had I just kind of been, had a little more grace with myself and just given the best effort that I could for the day. So anyone else want to weigh in?
On that last point, Natasha, I've talked myself completely out of races before. Just like Ironman World Champs in Nice last year, I started throwing up my nutrition early on the bike and just looked at my splits and thought that the race was completely over, and talked myself out of what could have been just like an awesome day where I enjoyed the experience. So don't get so caught up on time goals that it makes your day or miserable. Races should be something to be celebrated, and same with the training. If you're not hitting the paces, like focus on getting more recovery, or focus on the tangible things that you can change around your workouts. Maybe your nutrition's off, but there's a lot to focus on in this sport. Just make sure it's fun still. That's the biggest deal, is like go out and enjoy the workouts.
Yeah. Something I gave a speech at Galveston, and we'll talk to this in a second, the small changes, but I always give athletes 2 words, and that is be positive and be present. And yes, if things are going really badly and I'm not hitting my power goals, I'm not hitting my pace goals, I am the most proud of my races that did those 2 things. I was able to stay present throughout, and then I was able to have a positive mindset throughout. And then that's going to help you for future races. So, okay, moving on. Small changes that offer big results. So when you're done with your race, you kind of sit down with your coach and immediately go to, what can I do better with swim, bike, and run? When in reality, you're actually probably doing a great job with the workouts, but you're missing the mark on things to set yourself up for a great workout. One of the ones not in here is intention. Are you really thinking about the workout ahead of time, as far as what am I trying to get out of this workout, or why am I even doing it in the first place? What is the intention of this workout? And then executing accordingly. I'll give you an example. Like, we have a lot of athletes that there's a 30-minute aerobic run and they end up running it way too fast. And then they kind of go against the reason why we had that run in the first place. And so simply asking those questions ahead of time. And then another example would be a swim workout. Don't just go and swim laps. Go in with intention of like, I am really going to focus on my catch or my rotation, something that maybe a coach has pointed out. And if I can keep my mind fixated on that throughout the workout and see benefits from it, to which my body then knows just how to do that moving forwards, then that was a very successful workout beyond you checking the box or hitting certain paces. There's so much more that can be done that can really benefit you long term. So outside of intention on this list, it's activation pre-workouts. Chris, let's see if you can speak to activation. If hopefully your self-service is better.
Yeah. Yeah. Activation wise, yeah, it's so important to make sure that your strength is coming from the right place. So many times we have work going on, we have family, and we got to go for a run, and you have, you know, you only have the allocated time to do that run. But if you don't activate your muscles and your glutes and your hip flexors and all those types of things, then you're not going to get the most out of it. And that's when you can have something go wrong as well. So it's important to just look at not just doing core work or doing sit-ups, but making sure that you're doing them well. And that's what I see a lot. I see a lot of people that will do core exercises, but if you're not doing them well, they're not actually serving you the way that they should.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, and then he spoke to everyone at the Ironman Texas, just about spending 5 minutes. If you only have 30 minutes, run 25 minutes and take 5 minutes before your runs to do some activation so that when you do start running, you're working the right muscle groups. You're going to run better, but then also you're going to ward off injury because you're pulling on the wrong thing. So, when I was heavy in training, I gave myself honestly like 20 to 30 minutes. I had the time, but to roll out during that time, I'd really think about what are my goals for this workout. I'd maybe look at a previous workout and see how I executed upon it. What were my numbers comparing power to heart rate, and go like, okay, that's what I did last time. As I get going on this one, if I just did that first interval and my power was higher or my heart rate was lower, it gave me so much more confidence and excitement for the rest of the workout. And so just being aware kind of as you do those things. And then as soon as I got onto the bike or the run, like my body just felt like it was ready to work immediately. And because of that, I could actually train harder. Outside of this, we talked about earlier, hitting all strength and mobility sessions. Those are the first ones to go. We find, especially in an Ironman training block. Mental training, massively overlooked. Definitely something to talk to your coach about. Kind of what are some strategies to prepare your mind for race day. There's so many. And then workout routine adjustments. You know, have an honest conversation. If you are looking at your schedule at the end of the week and not everything is green, you need to ask yourself, was I just bad at time management for this day? Or does this really not work for me? One thing I was telling an athlete today, I have some athletes that travel a ton. They don't have a lot of time, but they have really big goals. And with that, we have to be very specific to maximize their training time available. So they actually go make a note for me in Training Peaks on Monday that says, Monday, hour and a half, available to do swim and mobility or bike. And so they give me the options of what they can get done in the time available. Then the next day, Tuesday, traveling, only have 30 minutes and accessible is treadmill. So I would give them specifically sessions to that. And at the end of the day, someone who's extremely busy is still able to get all green across the week. And so that is the goal for all of you guys. Getting it done, but making sure it's sustainable and within your work-life balance. Sleep and recovery routine, you know, nailing that. Obviously, that's super important so that you can train effectively and just be well recovered for everything in life. But you got to ask yourself and be honest, like, why is your sleep bad? Why is my recovery bad? And then what are the things you can put in place to improve upon them? I do find a lot of the times that me just focusing on that outside of swim, bike, and run ends up giving the best results, as well as nutrition. And then blood work, you guys, you know, you go through a massive Ironman block, and if you are not aware of kind of what's under the hood, you know, maybe females specifically, a lot of the times we're lacking in iron. Maybe you've been training indoors all winter, vitamin D, vitamin K. It's not normal for you to feel run down. And so if you're like, oh, this is just Ironman training, it's not. Like, you got to, again, ask yourself, it shouldn't be, right? How can we do this for a long-term approach? Because a lot of us are in the sport. Yes, we have goals to be fast, but we're doing this for our lifestyles and to be able to run around with our kids when, you know, and grandkids when we're 60. And so you need to just take care of your health and have like a long-term approach when it comes to all that. Ashton, if you can drop the slides, and then coaches, if you guys want to weigh on in some small changes you feel will benefit these athletes, and we'll just take 2 more minutes here. Anyone?
I'll add to what you were saying about as far as blood work and supplementation. you mentioned about D, for example. You know, we're in the sun all the time. We may be swimming all the time. I surf a lot. I know a lot of pro surfers, and they're in the sun all day long, every day, and they are all notoriously really low on vitamin D. So even if you think that you're doing well or you're eating certain foods, it's still important to go through the steps of getting some blood work done so you can see where you're at, because that can shift everything. I mean, that can transform your performance, can transform your mental health, can transform your ability to sleep and recover and bounce back. So supplementation is one of the top key things, what I would recommend.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Okay, guys, I think that's it. The last slide, let's see here. We have some questions, 100% a lifestyle. And yeah, the last thing is just have those conversations with your coaches if you need that outside help. That's why we're here. Nothing is off limits. A lot of the times I get the comment that I don't want to bother you with something again. I'm like, no, that is why we're here. Please bother us. We want to help you in any way we can. So guys, appreciate you being on the call. We went a few minutes over, but hopefully worth it. And we will see you guys next week. Bye.